The Mets have looked pitiful over their six-game losing streak, and Francisco Lindor is a key culprit in that. He played well in a Saturday loss against the Rays, but he has not shown up since then. He has gone hitless in his last four games and only drew two walks in that time. Dating back to um, that 8-4 loss against the Braves, th- um, the he has gone. Hang on. He has gone 0 for his last 8, 12. 0 for his last, like, 15 or something like that. He is not playing well, and his numbers have all tanked. His OPS is at 800 right now. He went from someone who was a sure lock to make the All Star game to someone who shouldn't. Now, as the Mets are on a six-game losing streak, and as ownership is doing nothing to fix it because ownership is feeble, as we all know, dramatic things need to happen. First of all, I'm convinced Steve Cohen only cares about the money coming in and does not care about actually winning a championship. He just doesn't. He even said he didn't want to lose money this year, hence why he's not spending during the offseason like he can. Like that shows he does not care about the team. Ownership has really done nothing about this. So there's a few things that I think that Mets fans could do themselves. Not showing up to games at this point is not realistic because people already have tickets and they'll still be making money off of it. But um, the All Star game voting. Right now, Lindor is, or not right now, but as of June 16th, Lindor was at the top by a long shot for shortstop. And you have Pete Alonso at second for first base, and then Soto is fourth in outfielders. So why not just stop voting for the Mets? If the Mets, if Mets players are not voted to make the All Star game and they don't, that might be a serious wake up call to the organization. However, if they're going to truly fix their slump, they're going to need to do drastic measures. This team has no pitching, as you can see. Their starters are crap for the most part. Their bullpen is also really bad. Um, I get that these two games were lost in a bullpen. Um, Paul Blackburn really stunk it up against the Rays, and Max Kranick did nothing to really help him out. And hence the feeble Mets blew a 5-1 lead that really kickstarted this whole thing. Um, this game, Mets led 4-1. David Peterson got into a bit of trouble in the bottom of the eighth, and all those runs scored as Reed Garrett then stunk up the place. But a lot of the other losses have come from their terrible starting pitching. Like this Blackburn game, you have the McGill game, but thankfully he's on the IL. You had the Griffin Canning regression game last Sunday. This crap from Clay Holmes and Huascar Brazobum. It's been terrible for the Mets recently as they had a lead in two of their three games against Atlanta and blew both of them. The Mets have been exposed as total frauds. They're back to being below 500 on the road, and they got swept both on the road and at home. And if you think that the schedule for the Mets is getting any easier, you're in for a rude awakening. The Mets played a weak team in the Atlanta Braves and got embarrassed by them. I'm not saying that this is the kind of game that can put the Braves back into the race. They have to jump several other teams. They have to jump the Diamondbacks. They have to jump the Reds, Cardinals, Brewers. They're they're still out of a spot, by like 5 games. They're still, I think, 5 games out of a spot. Um, let's just look here. They're 5.5 games out of a spot, as the Mets only have their spot by 4.5. So the Mets wild card lead, which once stood at 7.5 games before this losing streak, now 5.5, as they blew a 5.5 game division lead in a week. So honestly, for the Mets, even making the playoffs now is no longer as much of a lock as it seemed. Nonetheless, the Mets schedule does not get any easier. They're playing the Philadelphia Phillies for first place in Philadelphia, as the Mets have sucked all 3 games on national TV. Yeah, I don't see this being a pretty ending for the Mets. Then it's back to Citi Field for a 4-game series against the Braves. Same Braves that have just humiliated the Mets. Then they go to Pittsburgh and play the Pirates. This could be a get-better series, seeing as the Pirates right now are below 400 and are even worse than the Miami Marlins. But with how bad they're playing, I would not be surprised if the Mets have a rude series against them. A much-needed off day on June 30th before they come back to Citi Field to play the Brewers and the Yankees, as their schedule gets a little bit less brutal. Finally playing the Royals before the All-Star game. The Mets have the potential to be below 500 by the All-Star game, although that would take a lot. The best, record below 500 they could be is 48-49, and this does imply that when you factor in a 6-game losing streak, they'd go on like a 6-25 slide. But it's not out of the question. Their 6-game winning streak from early against the Rockies and Nationals has been erased, and the Mets have not played well against good competition since their miracle run was over in late April. Contrary to what fans say, the Mets are one of the best teams above 500, and to be fair, the series didn't really hurt them in that regards. They split with... Hang on. The Mets split with the Dodgers in LA. They did beat them on their home soil, but after losing a series to the Red Sox and Yankees, beat the Cubs at home, went 3-3 against the D-backs, lost to the Cardinals on the road. Those are all the 500-plus teams they've played since their miracle run in April, when they looked truly unbeatable after winning series against the Cardinals, Phillies, Blue Jays, but they still lost series to the Astros and Twins during that time. Now, anyway, what was I saying about Lindor? The Mets have a lot of holes. They need a, hang on. They need a catcher. The Mets need a catcher badly, because both Alvarez and Torrens, they're both awful. Both of them. Alvarez we know is bad, and Torrens allowed 2 wild pitches. This was a fielding error when he tried to use a mask to pick up his ball. So 2 runs scored because Luis Torrens is bad. And if you think that offensively he's any better, he was the final out and went 0 for 4 without a walk. And Alvarez, well, we know how awful he is. And Torrens ain't any better. The Mets need a catcher, and there's a few available at the deadline, but it's going to be tough to get one of them. Not saying that I want Blackman anyway, and not Blackman, Goodman, because the Rockies don't really have anything else to offer in this kind of landmark deal. Third baseman, I'm also very sketchy on, but to be fair, Vientos has an injury. Brett Beatty is day to day, but he really should be on the IL. I don't know what the hell Carlos Mendoza is doing, and we'll get into some stuff about him later on if I have time. Um, but um, there's him. Um, um, the Mets really don't have any depth in their pitching, as you could tell. Um, their pitching has just regressed significantly. Like, like, look at Griffin Canning, for example. He was a once reliable pitcher who pitched his way to a 2.47 ERA at the start of the season, and um, he went six scoreless against the Los Angeles Dodgers. However, he's been playing pretty bad as of late and is a 5.74 ERA in June, and his last start was pitiful as he allowed 6 earned runs in 4 1/3 innings of work. It's not just him. Um, Clay Holmes is having significant regression. Um, Clay Holmes, his ERA is still at 3.04 because he hasn't played horribly in June himself. It was more so mediocrity, but still, he had a pretty bad start. Um, Obviously, Blackburn is terrible, and the Mets literally have to use a spot starter. They have to use a spot starter on Friday, and they had to use Henigman in the game against the Mets. That's how bad they were losing. So now they have to use Tidwell. They're using Tidwell against Zach Wheeler. Let's just look at the odds the Mets win the game. There is a 69% chance the Philadelphia Phillies win this game and extend the Mets' losing streak to 7. Then, the game against the 21st on Fox. The Phillies have a 59% chance to win as Mick Abel, who's been pretty good this year, is facing Griffin Canning. And then the 22nd, ESPN. The Mets do have a 53% chance to win as their, I guess, so-called ace David Peterson's on the mound, and Luzardo is not that good. But Luzardo, his stats are more exaggerated by one awful game. His ERA was 2.15, and then it swelled up to 3.58 as he allowed 12 earned runs in 3 1/3 to the Milwaukee Brewers. Then allowed 8 in 2 1/3 to the Blue Jays to make it 4.46. But he's been inconsistent, but he's not terrible. So none of this is a good for the Mets. And so again, pitching is something that you need if you're the Mets. So you need an ace, you need an elite bullpen arm, and you need a catcher. And you may not be able to get this for one team, but you gotta be thinking the Mets can't really keep emptying out the farm. First of all, a lot of the players on the Mets right now have played so awful that they've tanked their trade value. Ronnie Mauricio is a good example. He probably had value, but he has 2 home runs, he has 3 RBI, a 182 batting average with a 591 OPS. He's terrible. He is terrible. Brett Beatty is another one that the Mets could sell, but what they're getting from in return is low. Brett Beatty has played pretty badly in June before his injury. He has 8 home runs and 24 RBI, but only a 219 batting average and a 686 OPS. So he hasn't exactly been playing very well either. He he seemed to turn it around in April, and he had a pretty good May when he came back from the minor leagues. But he has completely just tanked himself in June and then got injured. Alvarez is awful. Vientos is really hurting himself. And now he's hurt too. As Mark Vientos hasn't played since June 2nd, but his stats are pretty pitiful as well. 230 average and a 678 OPS with 6 home runs and 21 RBI. So for the Mets, it's really not about giving up prospects. And there's probably a team with an ace, with an elite bullpen arm, that really needs an elite starter. And I'm not sure what that team is. I'm not sure what this deal is. What I'm saying is trade Lindor. The Mets can trade Lindor. He has a 15-team no-trade clause, so some teams we can't trade him to. And this is the last year the Mets can trade Lindor. They can't trade him without consent after 2026. And there's 15 teams he can't be traded to. He's under a 10-year, $341 million contract. He needs to find another team that's willing to take it on in like this big swap. Once we find something. It doesn't say which teams he's on his no trade clause with. So, again, I can't really think of what deal it is unless I know what teams it is. But the Mets can trade Lindor. And they should. Trade him at a deadline. Because when the Mets now, it's a weird position. The Mets can't continue to roll out this crap every single day. 45-24 was really padded by playing weak teams like the Nationals, Rockies, White Sox, Marlins, Pirates. They do play some more games against the Pirates, Marlins, and Nationals, but there's no more Rockies, there's no more White Sox in there, and there's still plenty of championship contending teams that the Mets have never played. Like the Mets have never played the Mets have never played the Padres, or more significantly, the Giants. The Mets have never played the Giants, as they're really more championship contending of a team. They've also never played the Brewers or the Reds yet. So there's still plenty of teams the Mets have never played that they could be dealing with for a wild card spot. And on the AL side, the Mets still have never played the Tigers. They still never played the Guardians. Still never played the Royals, or the Royals are really starting to slump now. They've never played the Seattle Mariners. So there's many teams the Mets have not played. They still have to play one series against the Yankees. So it's not good for the Mets. And there's clearly this culture of the Mets don't care about their own team right now. And Carlos Mendoza has implemented a culture that losing is acceptable, being feeble is okay, and that the Mets will not do anything to make themselves better. So what can the Mets really do about it? I don't know. There's not a whole lot that the Mets can really do about it. Again, Carlos Mendoza should be fired, but he won't be. But I think that for the Mets, what they need to do is that they need to seriously think about trading Lindor for what they need.